With the decision to inspect the camshaft, the crankshaft had to come out. The cylinder walls looked in excellent condition, so if I pulled them, I would have to hone the cylinders and buy new rings. That would be an expense of several $100s, and one I didn't need, especially since the block had only 75,000 miles. While we have a good camshaft indexing tool available, I prefer to mark time gears myself, and I typically do so in two places. As I've told before, opening the bottom end was disheartening and disappointing. I thought at $75K this was going to be a remove and install with only the cost of new seals. The bearing shells were damaged during the rebuilder's assembly and a lack of concern about cleaning the block. The journals were ground 10 under, 0.25 metric. And they showed some distress from the debris left in the block. The not hurt shells showed crank grinding traces, a little extra wear through the layers with some debris under the shell, and the high wear point of journal contact, still exhibiting the grinding irregularities. With the design clearances, you will always have a high wear area, and that can differ down the crankshaft depending on the forces by the pistons, drive belt load, and torque off the flywheel. We also have a load at the rear not only from the camshaft drive, but the high-pressure oil pump altering the vector. So how does the crankshaft look after 75,000 miles and poor assembly practices? Number 1 journal at the front doesn't look bad. 2 light scratches from some debris and vectored wear off to the side. The journal for cylinders 1 and 2 look very good from a stock journal, a satin sheen with grinding traces visible but uniform. The cap bearing shell doesn't see a high load compared to the top shell. A few light lines that can be grind marks or light debris. The rod side could have been focused better. Most wear is at the edge, but that's expected due to the offset design of these rods. Some of the copper layer is starting to show through. How much clearance we have will alter the contact width. Rod 2 is what I would consider okay for this motor, mostly grinding marks and the polished wear. The same for main journal number 2. And its bearing. The second rod journal shows some debris discoloration, but it's not a deep scratch. And the rod to the right of the journal, also nothing surprising, not the best image. Number 4 shows more lines than just grinding marks, and the high load areas into the copper. Any debris that would have been left in the oiling channels would have gone through the center main journal and then been distributed to the fed connecting rod journals. And now looking at the feeding main journal number 3, we can see more debris effects, although mostly coloration, not deep scratches. And the bearings of this journal took a hard hit. Looking at the top shell, here is where debris would have come out and started to dig into the plating as the clearance tightened. But the lower, load-bearing shell really took the hit, and the debris made a few revolutions, probably tearing apart or diminishing. It cut into the copper layer and the bearing looks like it got heated and discolored. The heating may have happened later, as those deep gouges would have diminished the protective oil film. Much of that bearing debris is still residing here after 75,000 miles. The other oil-fed rod journal also showed discoloration but no deep scratches. The cap shell had some light scratches, but less than what you might think. The top rod shell showed odd wear, and I think there may have been external forces causing this. The paired rod on this journal was the one where the shell was hit on the side and knocked out of alignment and twisted sideways. The ironic thing is, with the misalignment, there could have been a lot more clearance for any debris to eject rather than score the bearings. The cap side shows two spots that are typical of debris underneath the shell, creating two raised areas. Main journal number 4, the thrust bearing journal, was unremarkable. The bearing shells showing a little higher wear than I expected for 75K, but it's my first 6.0. The journal for rod 7 and 8, unremarkable as well. The shells also unremarkable, with a little hint of debris. Number 5, the rear main journal, again what I would expect for 75K. The shell's the same as journal 4. I used the bed plate with the center bearing shells removed as a fixture, checking for a bending of the crank, and this one was remarkably straight. I always check calibration before any important measurements. This is especially true as I have micrometers that read in 10,000ths of an inch, as well as one that reads 100,000ths of an inch. After doing this for decades, despite knowing that I have a good feel by finger tension, I still use the clutch for critical consistency. Ford just copied this information from International for the service manuals, so you need to double check any of the metric to imperial dimensions. I'm still trying to decide if the designers of this motor are thinking in imperial or metric. I've converted to 10,000ths of an inch, but I'm not sure what they meant in the case of the larger dimensions. For the standard size, did they mean 3.189? Or did they mean 3.190? Looking at the other dimensions, despite the vehicle industry changing to metric in the 1980s, I think these guys are still based in imperial, converting to metric. I do at least 2 axis measurements per journal, and multiple across the width, which is normal procedure. I don't have a round bar for this, so I used one of the edges of my straight edge, at the bottom and the sides, and did the same with the block. There was no block distortion, or bed plate distortion. So I needed to get the journals from this to this. And you could tell this is the same journal based on the coloration in the stress-relieving groove on the side. When you surface a crank with a grinding wheel, you get a very good smooth finish, but you still have some grinding marks. And I'm sure after the cam, you know where this is going. And then there's crank polishing. And if you know what you're doing, and you are careful, you have to know where your dimensions are and keep checking how much you are abrading off to know where to stop. You may not be able to go to the finest grit you'd like to. There's not much more for me to narrate here, especially with my nasal condition. And there's a song someone who knows me has been pushing to incorporate in these videos. So I found a place to incorporate it.
I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. Is it too much to ask that you be all mine? I never was good at sharing. I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. Is it too much to ask that you be all mine? I never was good at sharing. I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. Is it too much to ask that you be all mine? I never was good at sharing. I'm just good at caring too much.